This is a Black Nouveau web exclusive. I'm James Causey, welcoming you to our first web session with psychologist Dr. Ramel Smith. We're here to talk about mental health in the African American community. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, James.
Okay, there's a lot going on right now. We have the shootings in Vegas, the hurricanes in Florida and Texas, and what's going on in Puerto Rico. How can African Americans, especially when you consider the protests in the NFL and all that other stuff going on, how can African Americans maintain a healthy mental health?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. You know, if you just kind of do a cursory review of people on social media, they'd be like, it's too much. I can't handle this. You know, I had to turn off the television. I have to take a break from Facebook or Instagram, things of that nature. And because what it is when you see all of those horrific situations, it creates what we call a vicarious trauma. And vicarious trauma is meaning I'm almost reliving the trauma that I see happening to other people as though it's happening to me. And when it's one thing, it's very difficult. If we just think about what happened in Houston, you know, we see this and everybody is sending money. J.J. Watt has raised almost 18 million, and it's just a lot of people helping. And then there's the Florida incident, and then there's Puerto Rico, then there's Charlottesville, then there's Mexico, and then all of a sudden there's a possible issue with North Korea, nuclear weapon, and then we have good old-fashioned racism in America with Colin Kaepernick and the NFL and NBA, where we have our commander-in-chief actually disrespecting a lot of our athletes. In fact, he's condemning them in a way in which he wouldn't even condemn neo-Nazis and people of that nature. So as an African-American, as a black person, it's too much sometimes, because you see, not only am I dealing with this, but I'm dealing with real life stuff too. I still have a family, I still have a job, and it can get overwhelming. The first thing what we have to do, though, is what we always done. We have to recognize that we're very, very resilient people, and part of that resiliency is come in our ability to understand that no matter how tough it is, we know we're going to get over it. We may not know how, but we take it day by day. A lot of us do it by faith, which is something that we still can get into. So when we start talking about having those daily times of meditation, those daily times of prayer, those are those things that help us to clear our mind. And then in conjunction to those things, what we also want to do is say, how can we help those people who we feel for? So whether it's Puerto Rico, whether it's Houston, whether it's Miami and Florida, things of that nature, what's way I can donate, whether it's donating through my time, you know, giving back and raising money, or donating through actually giving money or giving supplies, things of those nature. Those are some of the few things we can do to keep our sanity in these times that seem a bit insane.
So donations could be like a healthy form of dealing with things.
No, it's a very healthy, and it's not only just from, you know, where it sounds good from a neurological standpoint. You know, we'll come on and we'll talk about neurochemical transmitters within the brain. We have several different things like epinephrine, adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, but these specific neurochemical transmitters that make us feel good, something like a serotonin. Whenever you do a good deed, serotonin goes up. So that's why when you donate and you say, I'm going to give, I don't have a lot to give, but I'm going to give $10. You said, you know what, I've given and I've done something that I could do. You know what, I don't have any money, but I looked into my closet and I have some great clothes that I don't wear anymore. I'm going to give these to somebody, and I attach myself to an organization, a church, a community organization that does these great things. And you know what? Now you feel good, because not only are you doing good things, but you're around a spirit of people who's doing good. And whenever you start to think about others more than yourself, it has that natural reciprocal effect, and it has that regular release of endorphins and serotonin.
Now, you mentioned something kind of interesting. You talked about Donald Trump, President Trump.
Yes.
Is there a Trump effect to some of these things that's going on in our country right now?
Oh, it's definitely a Trump effect. I mean, and if we be honest, you know, you always want to have tremendous amount of respect for the office. Right. But you also have to recognize when you say, you know what, this is why there are different coups, because they understand that the person who's in leadership is not doing what they're supposed to. And it's very, very frustrating for any part of the citizenry to look and see your leader be not only embarrassing, but to be disrespectful, but to also have concerns of his mental stability. When we see our leader get into a Twitter beef with the leader of another country who we know has some definite issues, aggressive issues, when we see our president use profanities towards people who are exercising their freedom of speech, First Amendment right, and where he won't condemn other people, like I said, who do a neo-fascist, neo-Nazi, white supremacist view, these are all things that's very frustrating. When you see a president who could disrespect another elected official just for asking for help, and to criticize them and only to applaud those who applaud him, it lets you know that we're dealing with a person who has not only egocentric and narcissistic issues, but some serious mental health issues. And when you have that, you become a bit nervous, because you say, this is the person who was normally known as the leader of the free world. And now this person has the ability to put us into a lot of different negative states. So you said, is there a Trump effect? There's definitely a negative Trump effect for those who look like us, because for some of the people who voted for Trump and are the same ilk of Trump, they feel empowered. They feel greatly happy to have somebody like that representing them.
But there's certain things that he can't control. He can't control the weather. He can't control what happened in Texas. He can't control the hurricanes that took place.
No.
So how do you blame him for that?
Okay, well, first of all, let's not blame him for the hurricanes. Let's not blame him for that. But what we can say is, did you get enough help in time? When we look at what George Bush went through with Katrina, where people say this was horrible. Well, what did we learn with FEMA? Did FEMA really do all they could do for Houston? Because in reports, there was a lot of help coming through Houston, but not in those sects of Houston, the Fifth Ward, those areas that was from our most vulnerable population. And when we look at the hurricanes, okay, we can't blame him for Hurricane Irma or Maria or Jose or Harvey or whatnot, but we understand that he's not a fan. He doesn't believe in climate control. He doesn't believe in climate warming, excuse me. And so when you have a president who doesn't believe in these significant weather issues, you start to look at what impact will that have for us on the future. Because if we compare Hurricane Andrew from a few decades ago to Hurricane Harvey, we see how massive these hurricanes are becoming. And if we have a person who won't invest the time, invest the funds, not only to be able to understand these storms a little bit better, but to be able to forewarn and prepare those governing bodies, specifically FEMA, the national government, those people who would, if he doesn't buttress that financial statement, they're going to be in trouble for futures to come.
Now, is there any physical signs that a person could recognize, or like a loved one could see, when a person is under tremendous amounts of stress and may be coming close to some kind of mental instability?
Yeah, definitely. This is a good thing, and you said the key word, loved one. And so usually for you to be able to understand that somebody is in some type of distress means you have to have a close relationship with them, means you have to understand what makes them tick, seeing them in that good time, seeing them in that bad time. And if they've ever had any other mental health issue, saying, oh, you know what, this looks similar to it. But let's take something specifically like your president. When you see a person who's done things, and even though he's been unorthodox in this political campaign, when you see a person do things that are so outside of the box, you start to wonder, and you start to look for what we always say, the C's and D's, the changes and differences. Do we see specific changes and differences in this person's characteristic, specifically changes and differences that have a counterproductive effect for what they're trying to do? And when we look at people all around, you can sometimes say, you know what, something doesn't feel right about this person. This person was a little bit more snappy today. This person was a little bit more upset. So you can look at a pattern of tweets for a specific individual. You can look at a pattern of conversations through the media. What's the level of vitriol in the comments? What's the level of aggressiveness? Does it increase in intensity and frequency? And when we start to see these changes and differences in a negative direction, those are all red flags that something can happen. Well, something can be going wrong.
I think we're seeing some of this happen in our community. In our community right now. I mean, you see people racing up and down the street. Yeah. You see, our police chief even said that this is a lot of strange, impulsive behavior that is hard to control. Is that a form of some kind of mental instability that's going on, or what is that?
It's not only a form of mental instability. I think what you have to look is this. Oftentimes what we do is we want to look at the consequences. We want to look at the current behavior, but we don't want to look at those specific situations that allowed them to begin in the beginning. So when we're looking through the news every night, we see horrific things. We see a person who's driving a car who's, recklessly killed somebody. Mm-hmm. But then also we see a 6-year-old baby whose mother and father were shot, and now they're orphaned and they're put in foster care. And a few days later, we see that person in foster care was physically abused, sexually abused, emotionally abused. So I say all that to say this. When we look and see how young people are raised, and when we see all of the trauma, the stress, the frustration that they go, well, what happens is this. You don't see the manifestation of those negative behaviors there, but we're creating an environment that is breeding this type of individual who's impulsive, who's incorrigible, who doesn't care. It's not that these individuals aren't good. What we have to do, and I'm not taking away self-accountability. We need to have self-accountability. But when we look at the situations that we put people in dire poverty, when we look at the situations we put people in inadequate educational systems, all of those things that provide hope for you to go to the next level, when a person is in a state of frustration, a desperateness, of hopelessness, you see the type of behavior and the actions that you do. You get a person who has really suicidal thoughts, people who doesn't care about life. And when I don't care about life and I'm suicidal, I can easily be homicidal. I can easily be reckless with your life because I don't care about mine.
Well, we could go on and on with this, but you're going to be coming back and joining us again.
Yes,
so
yes,
this is great. So Dr. Smith has agreed to talk with us each month. So if you have a question for him, you can send it to us via Black Nouveau webpage at milwaukeepbs.org. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.